Pucks with Haggs is brought to you by Fanduel, the exclusive wagering partner of the CLNS Media Network.
And welcome to another edition of the Pucks with Haggs podcast. As always, I am your host, Joe Haggerty. You can find my work on the NHL and the Bruins at joehaggerty.substack.com. Do not be afraid to sign up for the premium membership. You'll get all articles sent right to your inbox that you can read, and you can read them completely if you have the premium membership. Today, I have my good buddy and colleague, Mark Divver from the New England Hockey Journal joining us. We're going to talk about a few things on the Bruins agenda and what's going on as training camp is getting ready to start. But first, just quickly want to thank our sponsors, Fanduel. Right now at Fanduel, there's an awesome $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you go there and sign up at fanduel.com/Boston. That's you bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's pretty sweet. And also our sponsor, Factor Meals, America's #1 ready-to-eat meal kit. Dinner's done in 2 minutes. Fantastic if you're on the go like I am with youth hockey season starting and both of my kids playing all over the place. So thank you, Factor Meals. Now, let's get to Mark Divver. Mark, how you doing and what's going on in your world?
I'm doing good, Joe. I've been back in the rinks the last week or so, watching midget hockey, split season midget, and all of that. That madness has begun. And now, on the immediate horizon here, we got Bruins rookie camp, the Prospects Challenge in Buffalo, and on to Boston training camp, and away we go.
Absolutely. No, it's the captain's practice started this week. First one was Tuesday at Warrior Arena. It's, I guess, an alternate captain's practice until they actually name somebody captain, right? Technically, but like I just got the feeling talking to Brad Marchand, seeing him as the guy that stepped up and spoke first. McAvoy and Pastrnak weren't there. It felt like to me, though he does not have the C on his sweater yet, it felt like to me this was already the first sort of, the leader stepping forward and talking and sort of setting the tone for everybody else in camp. And the guy that I think is going to end up being the captain for the next couple of years, acting like a captain, saying he's not thinking about being a captain. It's a team leadership group, saying all the right things, talking about the gratitude of being at the rink every day and every day being an NHL player being a gift and every day playing for the Bruins being a gift, saying all the right things and doing the right things. It felt to me like I was talking to the next captain of the Bruins when we talked to Marchand on Tuesday.
Yeah, I don't think I don't think there's really any question that it's going to be him. I know, that's subject to debate, I suppose, like everything is in this day and age. But if it's anyone other than him, I'll be stunned. I'll be stunned. I think he's the guy. I think we've all seen him mature over the years. He's a completely different person than he was when he first arrived with the Bruins. He's been through thick and thin with the franchise, and I don't think it's got to be him. It's got to be him.
Yeah, and I know the arguments can be made for Charlie McAvoy, David Pastrnak. Obviously, they are important parts of this team and the future, the long-term future of the Boston Bruins. But these guys are still in their mid to late 20s. Their time to be the captain of this team is going to come. I just don't think it's right now. And if you look at Brad Marchand, you're absolutely right. He's very different from what he was 10 years ago. I think league-wide, there may be like an eyebrow raised slightly that, Brad Marchand's going to be your captain because of some of the old reputation that he had from a long time ago. But people like you and I that have been around him day to day for the last, 10 plus years have seen that maturation, have seen the kind of effect that guys like Zdeno Chara and Patrice Bergeron had on him, and just his own maturing, having his own kids, getting older, sort of getting away from, the antics that he was, involved in. Like, I'll tell you a story. Like, I remember the first time he got suspended. I believe it was the first time he got suspended. He hit RJ Umberger. It was like a nasty, headshot elbow kind of thing. And we were in Nashville when he found out about getting suspended. I think it was like a 2-game suspension or something. It was a couple of games. And, he talked about it. He was getting bag skated, so we had to wait until after he was bag skated because he was going to be suspended. And then we talked to him afterwards. He, said most of the right things, whatever, was fairly dismissive of the whole thing. And then everybody walked away and I was still talking to him. And he said, he had a smirk on his face and he goes, first time I'm getting suspended in the NHL won't be the last time. and that was kind of his attitude back then, that like, that's the type of player he was. And it's like, fast forward to now, wholly different player, completely changed in that regard. That, the last few years has really done a good job of, I think, picking spots as to when he's going to be physical, knowing how to toe the line, still be the emotional catalyst that they need sometimes to drag them in the fight with. Oh, by the way, he may even have to tone down a little bit of that if he's the captain moving forward. But has figured out how to do it without hurting his team, without signing over more checks to the NHL. He's already given over $1 million in fines and game check suspension over the years, but really has toned that down in the last couple of years. And I think, that plus him being the last thread now to the Stanley Cup team that's on that team. He's the last guy. Obviously, Lucic is there too, but he was gone for a while when he left in 2015. Really, Brad Marchand is the last sort of connective tissue to that Stanley Cup team and that sort of era as David Krejci and Patrice Bergeron retired. So, I think there's way more reasons to make him the next leader of this team and have McAvoy and Pastrnak be the guys that are sort of his lieutenants, and they continue that group leadership thing that they've been doing for so long.
Yeah, and I think the Bruins are fortunate in a way to have a ready-made captain. It seems to me. Ready to step in, first Chara, then Bergeron, now theoretically Marchand. I'd have to look at who other teams have for their last few captains, but that's a pretty strong trio. If Brad ends up being the captain, it's tough to top those three in terms of guys who know how to do things the right way and how to lead, and they'll be in good hands with Brad, I believe.
No question. All right, big news this week. There's really not been much big news going on with the Bruins as we wait for camp to start and things to really form. Danton Heinen signs a tryout agreement with the Bruins. Had, I think it was like 8 goals and 22 points with the Penguins last year. I'm not surprised by this. You expect them to continue to bring in some veteran forward types to add to the mix to see if anybody pops and, to add to the depth and just in case they have injuries too. I don't know that I see him winning a spot on this team. So it's going to be interesting how that plays out with him. I would guess that Alex Chasen probably has a better chance of making this team than Danton Heinen does, but it'll be good to see him back in the mix. He was a well-liked guy when he played with the Bruins, and he had some decent seasons when he was here.
Yeah, I mean, he's a good player. He's not going to jump in there as a fourth line energy guy and run around, taking the body, but he has a good amount of skill. He's capable of, putting the puck in the net when he gets the chance. I don't think I see him sort of as a 13th forward, maybe.
Yep.
I don't know who. There's such a array of PTO guys and guys signed over the summer that could fit that role. Is it Danton or is it somebody else? AJ Greer? I don't know, but
Patrick Brown, that could be a guy too.
Patrick Brown. There's no downside to this. If he doesn't play well or you can't beat out these other guys, then you haven't lost anything. You haven't spent anything. So yeah, it was kind of a surprise, and I'm curious. It'd be interesting to see if he had other offers, or if this was, this was it for him this summer. I don't know. Jim Montgomery obviously has a background with Danton.
Yep.
So I can see the obvious connection there that would get him a tryout. So here he is, and we'll see what happens.
But real quick, I just want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Fanduel Sportsbook, the exclusive wagering partner of the CLNS Network. Get ready for the NFL season with incredible offers from Fanduel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Plus, all customers who bet $5 will get $100 off Sunday ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Now is the best time to join FanDuel. The app is easy to use, and you can be on everything from spreads to player props and more. So visit fanduel.com/Boston and kick off the NFL season with an offer you do not want to miss. It's a great promotions every day. It's a safe and secure app. You get paid instantly when you win, which a lot of people do at Fanduel Sportsbook. So give it a try. Go over and take a look if you haven't yet. Get going with your $200 in bonus bets guaranteed and have some fun with the football season coming up. Talking about the roster and training camp and, looking at the different permutations of lines and forwards and things and the ways that they can go. Anybody that you have a strong feeling about as far as the Providence contingent goes? And I'm assuming that Lauko is kind of an NHL guy. I wouldn't put him in that category, but just anybody that's down there that you think it's their time now to sort of win a spot, or you think they'll really be in the mix, even if we're not sort of talking about it.
Well, Lauko's not invited to the Prospects Challenge for, I think, the first time in 5 years.
Yes, he's graduated.
Yeah.
Give him a diploma.
To me, that clinches it. He's an NHLer now. Yeah, but I would point to Mark McLaughlin. I think he, his niche, I think, kind of is as a fourth line center, maybe a fourth line right wing. I think he's older than some of the other guys. And the rest of them, I'd be surprised if anyone, barring an unbelievable training camp,
Right.
You don't know what Lysell's going to bring or what Beecher's going to bring or Merkelhoff. I don't see any of those Providence guys making it this time out of camp. I see them getting games during the season at times because of injuries, or somebody may be on a hot streak in the American League. I could see a call up, but I'd point to McLaughlin. I think he is what he is. He's always a hardworking guy. I think he would be the guy I would point to as someone who has the best chance, or a better chance than the others, to make the team out of camp. He almost did it last year.
He did. I thought he deserved it, to be honest.
I think
with the way he played.
You could make a case that he did deserve it, but you got to send somebody down. You hope that if they're not, don't have to be exposed to waivers, then there's one way to get them down and keep control. But I would point to Mark as the guy.
Yeah, I mean, he's the kind of guy, like, when you go to Warrior just in the summertime, like, to see meet with the Bruins, to do whatever, like, he's always there.
Yeah.
He's always working out every day. He's always doing the right things. Like, he is the example that you point to of somebody that's doing it the right way and doing everything that they can do to put themselves in a position to have a chance like that. Like, my question is just what do you think the biggest thing, just watching in Providence, what are the biggest things that they've had him working on there? Is it more to sort of round out his sort of fourth line energy kind of game, if he's going to be that at the NHL level, like his two-way game? Like, what exactly has they been focused on and pointed towards with him in Providence to get him ready to be in that spot?
Well, I think he played, up and down the lineup in Providence. I don't recall him getting any power play time. I could, there were a lot of guys, more offensive players, gifted offensive players than him.
Yep.
But penalty kill, face-offs, all that stuff, that meat and potato stuff that a fourth liner in the NHL has got to be good at. That's what his job was last year, and he was pretty good at it. He, the scoring touch is not there. He's not going to be that guy, but to put up surprising numbers, I don't think. But if you're on the fourth line, they're not looking for that.
No,
you don't have to go out, and if you can go out and put up 15 goals, well, hey, that's great, and that'll earn you more money. But I don't think that's a prerequisite to for him to win an NHL job at this point. I think
no.
And, his he's always an underdog, always. I was talking to a college hockey assistant coach the other day, and he reminded me that, Mark was originally committed to St. Lawrence. No one else really was all that interested in having him as a player on their team. So,
Yeah.
St. Lawrence first, then he ends up at BC as captain.
Yes.
I think for 2 years. I mean,
Yeah.
he his whole life he's been hearing he's been an underdog. He can't do it. He doesn't have this. He doesn't have that, and yet he always finds a way. So, I think whether it's right now out of camp or at some point during the season, I think he'll be up.
Yeah, we don't root for individuals in this business that we do. We don't root for teams, but we definitely root for individuals and good people. And Mark McLaughlin's one of those.
Yep.
Totally respect the work ethic that he has, and I wouldn't expect anything less from a kid from Billerica. Like, that's just the way they're built there.
Yeah.
They don't know anything except like giving their best all the time. So I expect high ratings for this podcast episode in Billerica. That'll be fantastic. All right, let's move on to sort of the biggest topic that I kind of want to talk about with you. And I wrote about this a week or two ago. It's just the Bruins for the second summer in a row were ranked 32nd in the NHL as far as the prospect pipeline goes, dead last. And they threw them a backhanded compliment saying they were closer to the 31st team this summer than they were last year. Thank you very much. They're not as bad in last place. They're not as worst as they were a year ago, but didn't have a prospect in the top 150 in the athletic rankings. And we know some of the reasons why, but just curious on your thoughts of the current state of the draft and development system for the Bruins, their prospect pipeline, because you're closer, I think, to this than anybody else really that covers the team. And just why you think it is where it is right now, beyond like what we all know, right? They're in the mix every year. They trade away a lot of their first round picks. Like, obviously, if you're going to do that, you're not going to have the best prospect group, and you're not going to have the one that gets the glowing reviews, like, the Red Wings and other teams that are perennially in the lottery every year. But it goes beyond that, right? There are teams like the Tampa Bay Lightning that hit on third and fourth round picks and seem to continue to churn those guys out. Just curious what your thoughts are on that whole sort of thing with the Bruins prospect group and the pipeline in general.
Well, yeah, it does come down to where you draft. And in the case of the Bruins this past draft and going forward for a year or two,
yep.
Do you draft at all in the top, say, 75, 100? If you're not up in that group, the odds are so limited that you're going to hit on a pick. So that's an obvious factor here that they just don't have the picks. Now, have they missed on some? Yeah, sure they have, and so have everyone else. Other teams miss all the time. And, these teams that have, first of all, I totally respect what the athletic guys do, watching those prospects. It's unbelievable how they keep track of all of that. I wouldn't want to have to do it. I don't think I could do it, but they're not always right. These teams that have great prospect pools, well, Buffalo's, finished out of the playoffs for what, 10 years?
Right.
Detroit's been terrible. Some of these teams with great prospect pools, it's because they pick high every year, So if you want to trade that for a first place finish, or in Boston's case, a record-setting year last year,
yep.
I'll take what the Bruins have done recently than I'd rather have that than finish out of the playoffs 10 straight years, But I think the development part, I think they're doing a great job in Providence, getting these kids up to speed. I don't think you can point to that and say, well, they're not developing kids. Well, they're doing the best they can with what they have.
Right.
The old saying, you can't make chicken salad out of chicken feathers. Well, if you're talking like 6th, 7th round draft picks, free agents, if that's what you're working with, then yeah, you're not going to get a top line. You're not going to get a top 6 or a top 3 forward or a top 2 D. It just, it's not going to happen if you're picking picking from the pool the Bruins are delving into. So I don't think there's anything wrong with the development system. I think it's good. It's where the Bruins are picking that's been a problem, and they miss as everyone does, and that's just a fact of life in the NHL. You'd like it to be different, but that's the way it is.
Yeah, I think the one thing I would say, well, there's two things. I definitely think you need to see them hit a little bit more in the middle to late rounds. If you go back to 2018, since then, they have only had one player that they've drafted and developed that suited up for an NHL game, Lauko. That's it. That's a long period of time where you have not produced any NHL talent to date. And I think, that's going to start to catch up with you now if that continues, with Bergeron retiring, with Krejci retiring, with, the players, Marchand is now 35, with those guys getting older, if you're not finding, and I pointed to Tampa Bay in the article I wrote, Braden Point was, I think, a 3rd-round pick. There was several players, Cirelli was like, I think, a 3rd or a 4th-round pick. Yep. There's a bunch of guys they hit on that were in that mid pick range. And the other part of it too that I'm curious about, and I wonder what your thoughts are, is just I feel like they don't draft as many OHL kids as a lot of other teams do. It seems like there's a lot of focus on college, U.S. born college kids, which is fine, and I love that. And I think they do need to certainly supplement their draft picks with those kind of players, like the John Farinacci type signings. You go out and get somebody that wasn't going to sign with another team or wasn't drafted that's coming out of college hockey. I think that's a great way to augment what you're doing in the draft and to try to replenish those prospects. But if you look at rosters of teams that win the Stanley Cup every year, it's mostly Canadian boys still. It's not American guys. So, you would hope or want them to maybe push a little more focus towards the OHL teams and the Canadian junior teams when they're drafting, even more than they do right now. But those would be the two biggest things I would look at and say maybe they could do a little better or change the way they do business a little bit from what they've done in the recent past.
Well, that's a fair point. And in recent years, the last couple, they've drafted some OHL kids. The Harrison kid, Poitras.
Yep.
There's probably others that I'm.
And Studnicka they drafted too out of the OHL.
Studnicka, Studnicka is an interesting case in that. And I was thinking about this because I'm heading to the Prospects Challenge next week. When the first viewing of him at the Prospects Challenge, he was a standout. And it looked like, as a pick somewhere in the 50s, he looked like a guy that they hit on and was going to be an NHLer for quite a while.
Yeah.
Now, something went off the rails there. COVID was involved there. I think that messed things up. And now, Jack is, I think he'll be struggling to make the team in Vancouver this year.
Yep.
He, maybe the Bruins should have traded him when he was in the midst of, having a very good year in the American League. Back then, but why would you trade him at that point? That's kind of, when you have a guy that looks like he's going to hit and be a legit NHLer for a while, why would you trade him? Well,
right.
Teams do that, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. As far as the OHL, one thing I would point out is, Wyatt Johnston with Dallas a couple of years ago. The Bruins had a chance and 20 other NHL teams had a chance to take him in the first round. Boston took Fabian Lysell. Hey, fine. He's a prospect. He's a good player. But Wyatt Johnston scored how many goals in the NHL last year? Not the American League, the NHL.
Right.
So, I mean, I wouldn't blame the Bruins for blowing that pick. Certainly, Lysell, the jury's out on him, but. And a lot of teams missed on Johnston, but there's an example. Dallas knew something. They made the pick, and it's paid off for them big time.
Speaking of Lysell, what maybe do you think? He's obviously coming off a year that was up and down. He had I think a pretty good start. World Juniors really went off the rails for him. He did not have a good World Junior going there for Sweden. And I think inconsistent and maybe injuries when he came back, and he was kind of still coming back from the concussion when he went to development camp, and that was kind of up and down for him as well. What do you think the Bruins need to see out of him, and sort of where does he stand in the pantheon of Bruins prospects right now?
Well, he's near the top. One or two, you could say. Lowry, Poitras, maybe. He probably still has more work to do, but to get to the number one spot. But Lysell, I want to see some maturity. He was started last year, I think, as a 19-year-old. That's young in the American League.
Yep.
But I'd like to see day in, day out, more a harder practice, better practice habits, just all the things that go with maturing as a person and as a player. I want to see a guy who really wants to be an NHLer sooner rather than later. I'm not sure I saw that last year at too many points. I don't think I did. But he's young. So, you got to kind of live with the growing pains and hope that, he gets there. There's no reason to think he won't. I think he's got a good coaching staff in Providence that stresses that kind of stuff. They'll be all over him if he doesn't practice, in a way that meets their standards. So I look for that for him, and, maybe a 45, 50-point season in the American League. And we'll see what happens. I'd expect him to maybe get an NHL game, some NHL games, if he shows that he's earned it. Like I said earlier, I don't expect him to make the team out of camp. I just don't think he's there yet, and there's no need to rush him. There's no need to cram him into the lineup at this point. But I think I believe he's over that concussion now. Going into the Prospects Challenge, I'd look for him to be one of the Bruins' better players there.
Yeah, and I think at some point it would be good for him to be called up to Boston for a cup of coffee, to also understand how hard those guys are working in practice every single game, and see the kind of standard that Brad Marchand sets for like how hard you're going to work every day, and how to be a pro, and what you're going to do every single day, and what the expectation is, even more, maybe to hammer that home, that like in order to get here and stay here and, be here at all, you need to be at a certain baseline level of effort, professionalism, like all that stuff, or it's just like not going to be acceptable. So like that might, for some of those younger guys, that might be a really good lesson and experience too. If, it's not sinking in quite as well for any reason, one or another. But, the skill level, obviously you can't teach that. And, the speed and the playmaking and the shot and like all the stuff that you see in flashes with him, you'd want to see more combined with, rounding out his game. John Farinacci, do you know much about him? Like I didn't really know much about him. I thought he played, I believe he was healthy and played in the Beanpot. So I seem to remember seeing him play at the Beanpot. I had no idea he was a member of the Donato family mafia. I didn't know that until until I looked him up on Hockey Prospects or one of those websites. So the Harvard Donato connection certainly doesn't hurt signing with the Boston Bruins. But anything that you might know about Farinacci as he enters into the mix here?
Well, I've watched him a lot over the last few years with, at Dexter, first of all. And he, in his draft year, he was, one of the top prospects in New England and got a lot of looks from NHL scouts throughout that year. And then he moves on to Harvard eventually, and he was a good player there. They had so many high-end players in the last 2 or 3 years, first-round picks, Coronado, Farrell, not a first-round pick, but a very, very skilled player. Stepped into the NHL last year, with Montreal for a while. And Farinacci was, a two-way center, played a lot of played a lot of minutes in important roles, PK, power play. I think he's a well-rounded player with a good skill set. I think maybe I'm crazy, but I want to say he's at this point today, or in November, he may be more NHL ready than say Johnny Beecher. Because he's a little older. He's got a little bit more experience. But I think I'd be surprised if he doesn't get some NHL games this year. I don't think he'll make the team out of camp. I think he'll need time in the American League, like anyone would coming from college. But I think that was a good signing, and I think one of the things the Bruins have to sell when they're recruiting college kids is opportunity.
Yeah,
look at the roster, and they can tell kids, hey, go to Providence, get your game ready, and we got room up here. We're not backlogged with guys with 8-year contracts that are ahead of you.
Right.
We got room. If you can play, we'll make room. So I think he was a great signing given where they're at with the prospect pool as we talked about earlier.
Yeah, and it seems like offensively he might have a little bit of a higher ceiling than Beecher too. Like Beecher obviously blows you away with his skating. He's a big physical specimen. Yeah. Like there's some things he's going to be able to do at the NHL level that will jump out at you, but I don't know that finishing off offensive plays and being that kind of a guy are it, with potential, maybe say upward movement at times into a top 6 thing if injuries, open up or whatever. Like he kind of reminds me a little bit of Daniel Paille, where first round talent as far as skating goes, like toughness, all that stuff, would put himself in these great positions to score, but just didn't really have the hands to be able to get it done.
Yeah, well, that's a good comparison. If somehow Johnny Beecher could, develop the attitude, the hair on fire way that Sean Corrali played as a fourth liner for the Bruins.
Yeah.
Boy, if he had that in his toolkit, that would be. I would like to see that. Now, maybe the kid's not built that way. Maybe he doesn't have it in his DNA. But ratcheting up his mindset that I'm going to go out on this shift. I'm going to win races. I'm going to finish checks. Beecher needs more of that than he showed in college and last year in Providence. Although I will say he finished strong. He got better as the year went on, and I'm curious to see how he starts this year, if he can maintain that and keep on moving up.
Yeah, no, if the physical talents take over for him and the tools take over for him and he develop some of that, he's going to be able to beat other players out just because of his sheer skating ability and, the physicality that we see at times and the size and all that, the things that made him a first round pick in the first place. But this is what training camp is going to be. It's going to be really interesting on so many different fronts because there are going to be a lot of unknowns. It's going to be very different just from, same old of the last 10 or 15 years, because with Bergeron not there, with Krejci not there, with all these new combos they're putting together, there's going to be a ton to watch. I'm just curious your thoughts on the team in general, your expectation going into this year, where you think they sort of line up right now and what you're going to be watching when you come to training camp.
Well, I think they could be in fighting for their playoff lives here, for a good part of the season. I think they last year was last year. I think this year is not going to be. It's not going to be like that. I don't think.
Yep. No.
I don't see how you can watch or see what happened over the summer and think that they're going to even approach that. But
no, but by the same token, they could still drop 30 points from what they did last year and still make the playoffs.
The playoffs. Yeah. Well, and you look at what they do have. They got 2 very good goalies. They got a defense that's very solid. They're okay on the wings up in Boston. It's the center position that is lacking. And, you look at the two guys who departed and, teams just don't have guys, top six or top line forwards playing in the American League waiting to come up.
No.
That doesn't happen. So how are you going to replace Bergeron and Krejci? Well, you can't. You got to have somebody in their spot, Zach or Coyle. But that's one place that certainly bears watching. Can they even come close to matching the offensive capabilities that Bergeron and Coyle and Bergeron and Krejci brought?
Yep.
That's a big ask. So I think the center position is going to be, a point of emphasis. I don't think that's a revelation by any stretch, but are they going to be a team that's going to try to win 3-2, 2-1 games with great goaltending? And, they're not a team. They haven't been a team that gives up a lot in terms of chances. So, is it going to be, even more of an emphasis on winning low scoring games than it has been? It seems that way to me. I don't know. I don't know what we're going to see here. I don't think we're going to see a run and gun Bruins team. They're not built that way either. But the center position obviously is a point where, or a place where there are question marks for sure. And a trade to address that. Well, I don't know. Don Sweeney is deliberate in his moves.
Yep.
So, if you ask the question, well, why didn't they do something over the summer? Well, maybe the deal wasn't there that was to his liking. But I think at some point they're going to have to address that, unless Zaka and Coyle turn out to be something that's different from what they have been the last few years. So that will be something to watch for sure.
Yeah, and maybe the cost will go down for some of the players they were thinking about or kicking the tires on this summer if it becomes less than a full year of that player, true rental, mid-season in the last year of their contract kind of player. Maybe not. Maybe the other GMs will see if the Bruins struggle at the center position, they're really desperate for a center and they're going to be, hold them over a barrel for that. It'll be interesting to see how that whole thing plays out. But I agree with you. Like I was actually going to say before you mentioned it, they feel to me like a team that's going to try to win 2-1, a lot. And there's going to be a lot of pressure on the goalies and the defense to really, get things done. And I think that is something to really watch this season, and just with Jim Montgomery as a coach, he's a very sort of offensive minded coach, high risk last year. Like he wanted that weak side D down by the faceoff dot, ready to attack. And like, are you going to be able to play high risk, high reward, hockey like that? If you're trying to win 2-1, all that stuff's going to be really interesting, I think, to watch. Which, like, to my point, makes training camp in this whole, first couple months of the season fascinating, because it's going to be a brand new thing that we're watching this year with the Bruins. It's going to be funny. It's going to be really interesting.
Yeah. And Jim, he's an offensive coach.
Yeah.
He's not
Claude Julien.
It's got, no, it's not really, I don't think, in his DNA to be a defensive oriented guy, but coaches in the NHL have to adjust to what their lineup is, what they have.
Yep.
In college, Monty had, offensive teams. They were run and gun teams at Denver. And certainly the Bruins, I wouldn't say they were run and gun last year, but they were a powerful offensive team.
Yep.
And, as far as the goalies go, well, Ullmark had a career season last year. Does that mean that that's the standard for him going forward? Well,
right.
There's been a lot of goalies who had a great year, and then the next year and the year after were back closer to what they were before that great year. So
yep.
That's something to watch, whether he can, even come close to duplicating what was a fantastic season. And Swayman is a goalie who looks to be on the way up, but we don't really know what his ceiling is. I don't think he's close to it yet. But a lot of teams in the league would like to have two goalies like those two. So that's a strength for sure.
It's going to be interesting, Mark. We will definitely have you on again as the first couple months of the season roll out to see how things are going with the Bruins. Thank you very much for coming on, Mark Divver from the New England Hockey Journal, and thank you to our sponsors once again, Fanduel Sportsbook. New customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Go to fanduel.com/Boston to check it all out as they kick off, as the NFL kicks off its season. And the bettors are parading up and down the streets now that football season is back. And also Factor Meals. Thank you very much. America's #1 ready-to-eat meal kit. Done in less than or at 2 minutes. Head to factormeals.com/Haggs50 and use code Haggs50 to get 50%. Mark, thank you very much. Appreciate the time.
Anytime, Joe. Thank you.
All right, take care. And everybody will see you at the rinks. Thank you for tuning in.
New FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets, guaranteed. Plus, all customers who bet $5 will get $100 off NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube at YouTube TV.